Hello, my friends, Evolutionary Energy Arts family. So, guys, we have a reading for today. And so, if we look at the first card here, we see the One of Scrolls, which is reversed on track. So, we could obviously take that as meaning things are off track, off center, off kilter, the world's upside down. I don't think anybody would have a hard time, arguing that apparently seems to be how things are right now in this world where it's just been one big blow after another to humanity and to all the creatures living on the planet. And this seems like it's been our norm for 2 years plus, for sure, on a very, very intense level. And yet it does feel like it's even going to ramp up a little bit more in the coming future. So we see right next to it rejection. And so when we look at these two together, we might feel rejected in so many ways. Like the world is not listening to us, the world's not paying attention to us, the world doesn't hear us. So many of us are so awake, or at least we think we're awake, and we can see how everything is so screwed up. And we need real change. And meanwhile, if we just glance at the politics, it's the same thing it's been forever. It's all spinning your wheels in dirt and getting nowhere. And so many of us feel perhaps rejected by society, rejected by this world, and just would love to step out of it and step onto solid ground in a world that understands the sanctity of life and the need to work together truly, not just point fingers and call people different names, but truly work together. And many people recognize that, this whole facade that we find ourselves in is completely orchestrated. Yet we're being called on to change things. And that's why many of us are here. If we look at the Four of Pentacles, it's time for us to take stock of what we have available to us. What's at our disposal? What can we use? What can be the tools that we can use right now to actually start to change things? And if not in the whole country or in the whole world at one big swoop, at least in our personal lives and perhaps in our community, or at least in our intimate circle of family, friends, and acquaintances. What can we use that is there at our disposal right now? How can we make a difference? How can we actually start to manifest the change that we want to manifest? See the Queen of Swords right next to the Four of Pentacles. And the Queen of Swords is basically signifying that we have to do it in a kind of detached manner, because there are forces out there that want to get you riled up, that want you making irrational decisions, that want you reacting emotionally in a negative way and falling into the trap that leads to just divisiveness and, becoming again just another hamster or mouse running on the wheel forever, going absolutely nowhere, but expending your energy at something that bears no fruit. So we need to not get caught up in all that. We need to take a step back and to use our, as Zeke's having a dream right there, he's off running somewhere chasing a bunny. We need to not get pulled in to the emotional roller coaster that this planet is going through. And this planet is most definitely going through that roller coaster right now, as we have all sorts of dissension across the globe, and now all sorts of fear and panic, and people attacking each other out of fear in some areas that are going through this, virus that we have been so all encompassed with in our news and everything. So is it bringing out the best in us? It's bringing out the best in some, but as is the case with this society and this world and its viewpoint, it's always accentuating the negative. So, we might get one story out of 100 that talks about the good that somebody's doing, and 99 that's talking about all the bad that's going on. So, again, we look to the Queen of Swords. We must have a detachment from that. We must be able to think about things logically and listen to that calm, still voice that lies within and not get caught up in the drama. Viewing things almost like a judge would view things in an impartial way and just weighing the evidence of where we are and seeing where we want to go and then plotting a course. Because when it gets down to it, this is all about personal transformation. And, on an individual level, as we see Ganesh there, and it's also about transformation of the planet. So this is the microcosm and the macrocosm at work. And we are all going to face the darkest nights of our souls in these times that we're in right now. But they can still be the best times in so many ways because consciousness is changing. We are changing, and more people are waking up to the lies and illusions of the powers that be. Now we have to take it a step further, and we have to just say, we do not consent. And this has to go into the masses. The masses have to wake up. And we have to do this in a non-violent way, because believe me, there are forces that want this to be violent. Because then it would give them the opportunity to use the force, the military force, and clamp down in any way possible. And that also feeds certain dark entities, as we very, very well know. So, let's hope we don't go the way of a bloody revolution. But we must have a revolution in consciousness, and we must have a new system. The system has to fall. And we have to be able to step back from it. I was watching one gentleman that was talking about counties in Oregon are looking to secede from Oregon and join with Idaho. And so this gentleman is of a very conservative, traditional background, and I would venture to say probably even farming. And there's this sense of patriotism, and, he means extremely well. But this is what we need to look at is if we talk about patriotism, what are we talking about besides ego? And a lot of people just don't understand that. They don't have any concept of the ego. Most people are their ego. They don't understand the higher self. They don't understand anything that is not centered around the individual ego. And that's unfortunate because that's what the dark forces play up to. When you look at the commercials, when you look at the politics and the politicians, they're playing to our ego. They're constantly playing to our ego. It's just bluster and banter and hot air that goes nowhere. But it feels good. It might give you the warm fluffies when they're saying things that you agree with. And it strokes your individual ego. And, it's hard to get past the point where we allow that to happen anymore, when we could actually see, you know what? They're just trying to stroke my ego here. They're just trying to stoke a fire under me in order to get me to take their side, cast my vote for them, get behind them, say that's my man or that's my woman. And unfortunately, most people don't even really go that deep as to realizing that they're just simply, they're kissing our butts in some ways. They're telling us things that we want to hear, but as soon as they're in there, they forget all about that. But if we're talking about patriotism, how about talking about the planet as a whole? See, we're always allowing ourselves to be divided. Nothing wrong with saying, I love my state. So whatever state that is, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with saying, I love Oregon, or I feel so blessed to grow up in Mississippi, or Montana, or Florida. Look at our weather; it's great. I'm so happy to be a Floridian, or I'm so happy to be a Texan. Whatever it is, that's fine. But when we start putting ourselves above everybody else and saying that I live in the best state in the union, okay, that sounds a little bit more. Excuse me, guys. A little bit more that it could be in a negative light than saying I live in the best country in the world, which we were all brought up thinking we lived in the best country in the world, and we were so lucky to be what we would call ourselves Americans. But as we look and we see what does that really mean, and at the expense of what? As people awakened up to the fact that it's our military strength that's being used by these darker people, these entities, these corporations, when you get down to it. They use the military strength of the United States to control the world. So, are we proud that we were born in a country in which we maybe live better than most people in the world? Simply because our military is a tool of the banking cabal, the powers that be. And just like the Roman soldiers, whose families got treated a little bit better than the average folk, we've had it a little bit better than the average person. Certainly better than people in Syria, Iraq, Libya, Afghanistan. We could throw out these nations. So we've been blessed because of the military power of this country and the ability of the powers that be to use the military power of the country to do their bidding. So isn't that almost like blood money when you look at it? When you really look at it in that sense, isn't it almost like blood money? Really think about that. But it doesn't have to be that way. Again, it doesn't have to be that way. This is about transformation. And then we see love begins right above it. This world's going to change, and it is going to come into a period that we're going to be calling a golden era. Certainly compared to what has been in our past that we know about. And so it is when love begins that things truly they start to transform and to change. And when we start acting out of the heart chakra and living out of the fourth chakra there, that's when we'll start to get real change. And when we look at the Ten of Water, we see a contented and rewarding family life. Emotional and material needs are met, and trustworthy relationships. When we're operating out of that heart center, that's what's going to happen for us. The right relationships will happen. The right friendships will happen. Things will start to fall in place for us. And we see over here the Ganesh card. All the obstacles will be removed, and peace and prosperity, true peace and prosperity, will come. And it won't be a peace of one group of people because they're dominating another group. It will be a peace that comes out of unity. And so ultimately we will be successful in initiating and stepping into this new reality. Obviously, what we're going through right now, we could look at it as the birth pangs of the new age or the death throes of the old. But either way, change is most definitely coming, my friends. As always, thank you for your support on Patreon and Ko-Fi. God bless and namaste.